If you grew up in the 1950s, there are 1,000 things you remember, but can't quite name anymore. The way a cold Coke tasted out of a green glass bottle fished from a chest full of ice. The scratch of thick wool against your neck, and the smell of leather sleeves when you shrugged on a Letterman jacket you'd actually earned. The way a jukebox lit up the second your nickel hit the slot, that little clink, and then the whole diner found its soundtrack. And that's just the first 30 seconds. This is a memory box, not a history lesson, not a documentary. This is for everyone who lived through the 1950s, and somewhere along the way forgot how much of it there was. And for anyone watching who didn't live through it, who's just trying to understand what this era actually felt like from the inside, this is for you too. Because there's a difference between reading that a gallon of gas cost 29 cents and understanding what it felt like to pull up to a station and have a young man in a uniform come running out to fill your tank, wash your windshield, check your oil, and call you sir. That's not a fact. That's a world. And here's what we don't say often enough. This generation is the last one that actually remembers what America felt like before everything sped up, before the noise, before the constant pull of whatever's next. You remember when the news came once a day and felt like it mattered, when a family ran on one income, owned a home, took a vacation, and still had something left at the end of the month. When saying goodbye meant standing on the porch waving until the car was gone, because leaving wasn't something you rushed. That world deserves to be remembered, every piece of it. So settle in. We're starting on a Saturday morning downtown. When the storefronts gleamed, the sidewalk buzzed, and the air smelled like popcorn drifting out of Woolworth's, nothing beats sliding into a vinyl booth and flipping through the mini jukebox bolted to the table. For a nickel, you could pick your favorite tune and hear it come alive on the main machine. The cheeseburger always tasted better when it came with the sound of Elvis or Buddy Holly bouncing off chrome and formica. A real Letterman jacket had weight. Thick wool, leather sleeves, and those soft chenille patches that meant you'd actually earned something. You'd wear it with pride, even in spring, even when it was too warm, because that jacket told the world you were part of a team, and someone, somewhere, had cheered you on. That chrome-legged kitchen table wasn't just a place to eat. It was the center of the home. Sparkly formica tops in colors like turquoise or red made everything feel a little more cheerful. You could do homework there, roll out pie crust, or sip coffee while staring out the window. And it never once wobbled. Those old metal roller skates strapped right over your sneakers, and the key that tightened them lived around your neck like a badge of honor. You'd clatter down sidewalks, scuff up driveways, and, if you were lucky, fall in the grass instead of the pavement. Sitting on the porch while someone snapped beans was like being in a slow-moving Norman Rockwell painting. Nothing really happened, just the hum of cicadas, grown-ups swapping stories you'd heard before, and that soft snap as green beans dropped into a bowl. It was calm. It was ordinary. And you didn't know it was perfect. TV dinners came in divided trays that never quite balanced on your lap. Salisbury steak, mashed potatoes with a dent for gravy, and a brownie that either burned your tongue or stayed frozen. You'd eat in front of the tube, legs crossed, hoping the tin didn't rattle too much during your favorite show. Green stamps were more than just a reward. They were a mission. You'd lick each one and press it into a book, dreaming of the toaster or waffle iron you'd get one day. Mom kept the books in a drawer, and flipping through them felt like holding the future in your hands. Milk came in thick glass bottles, delivered to your doorstep at dawn. You'd grab it before the sun got too high, and inside was cream floating right at the top. Shake it or skim it, your choice. Either way, that cold milk tasted like it had come straight from a cow, because it had. Before screens and scrolling, there were radio dramas. You'd sit by the speaker with only a glowing dial and your imagination, picturing everything from cowboys to detectives chasing bad guys through static and music. The creak of a door or the clang of footsteps did more than most TV shows ever could. Pyrex bowls came in soft pastel shades, and they never seemed to break, no matter how many times they were dropped in the sink. They were so common you didn't think twice, until one day you realized Mom still used the same ones from your childhood, and they looked just as good. Fruit cocktail came in cans and tasted like syrup with chunks. You'd dig through the mushy pears and grapes to find the one cherry like it was gold. If your sibling got it first, there was no justice. If you got it, you took your time chewing. That cherry was your moment. Velvet photo albums had thick black pages and photo corners that stuck like glue. You'd flip through them carefully, trying not to smudge anything, and stare at people with serious faces and stiff collars. Those albums lived on coffee tables or bookshelves, and they held the whole story of a family. The pressure cooker was both marvel and menace. It hissed, steamed, and jiggled its weight like it might explode at any second. Mom would watch it with one eye and warn you not to touch. Somehow, out of all that danger, came pot roast so tender it practically apologized for being beef. Being told to go out and play came with no map, no adult, and no return time. You just ran out the door with your friends, made up worlds, climbed trees, scraped your knees, and came back when the streetlights blinked on. Nobody tracked you. Nobody texted you, and somehow you were always right where you needed to be. Family slide shows were a whole production. Someone dimmed the lights, the projector hummed and clicked, and out came endless pictures of the Grand Canyon or Aunt Doris in front of a hedge. Everyone groaned, but deep down you liked it. It was storytelling, family style, complete with popcorn, commentary, and the occasional upside-down slide nobody caught right away. Wiping fog off the inside of the car window with your sleeve was just part of winter. Your breath made the glass blur, so you'd clear a little circle to peek through. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. No defrosters, no automatic climate control. Just a good coat sleeve and a determined kid with cold fingers and warm lungs. Sewing kits and cookie tins fooled more than one hungry kid. You opened it hoping for shortbread and instead found tangled thread, measuring tape, and rusted scissors. Moms everywhere reused those tins, and somehow every single one smelled like peppermint and pin cushions. You learned real fast to shake the tin first before getting your hopes up. Clothespins weren't just for laundry. They were soldiers, fences, car parts, and anything else your backyard imagination needed. You'd line them up in rows or clip them onto things like little wooden tools. They weren't flashy, didn't light up, and didn't need batteries. But they sure kept you busy for hours. And if one broke, it became two new toys. The good scissors were sacred. They lived in a drawer, were only for sewing, and God help the kid who used them on paper. They felt heavy, sliced like butter, and made a satisfying snip. You knew you weren't supposed to touch them, but you did anyway just to feel grown up, and usually got caught before the second cut. Getting socks and underwear for Christmas wasn't exciting, but it meant someone cared. You'd smile, say thank you, and fold them away like treasure. Back then, you didn't expect 10 gifts or a gadget, just something useful and warm. Maybe they didn't sparkle, but they kept your feet dry, your waistband intact. Folding rulers were the closest thing to magic in a toolbox. Wooden arms clicked out with a satisfying snap, forming perfect angles without batteries or screens. Your dad would unfold one with a flick of his wrist, measure something with a nod, then snap it back down like a magician putting away his wand. Carrying your lunch in a brown paper bag with your name written in marker felt like a badge of honor. It might have held a peanut butter sandwich, an apple, and a cookie. Nothing special by today's standards. But that bag was packed with love, flattened after lunch, and reused more than once if it didn't get too greasy. Silly Putty wasn't just a toy. It was a newspaper thief. You'd press it onto the Sunday comics and lift off Snoopy or Dagwood in full detail, then stretch their faces into wild shapes. It bounced, it snapped, and it picked up lint like a magnet. Somehow, it lived in the same plastic egg for years and never dried out. Gas station road maps were free, folded like origami, and smelled like motor oil. You kept a stack in the glove compartment just in case. Every state, every route. If Dad got lost, Mom would unfold one across her lap, tracing highways with her finger like a general planning battle. GPS? That was a good co-pilot and a compass. Mercurochrome was the go-to for every scrape and cut, even though it stung like fire and left you with a red mark that lasted days. It looked like paint, smelled like medicine, and proved you were tough. No Band-Aid felt complete without that fiery dab. You'd flinch, pout, and then head right back outside to scrape the other knee. Being the remote control meant standing next to the TV until Dad found the right channel. Turn the dial, wait for the signal, adjust the rabbit ears, then stand still like a statue because it's finally clear. No voice commands, no remotes, just patience and a sibling rivalry over who got stuck doing it. And somehow it worked fine. Cartoons only came on Saturday mornings, and it felt like a holiday every week. You'd wake up early in your pajamas, pour a bowl of cereal, and plop down in front of the screen. Bugs Bunny, Popeye, and Tom and Jerry. No rewinds, no pause button. If you missed it, too bad. You waited a whole week for the next one. Writing your name on your underwear before summer camp was practically required. Moms used a marker or those little iron-on labels just in case laundry got mixed up. It was embarrassing, sure, but everyone did it. You'd never admit it, but that scribbled name gave you a weird kind of comfort when you were far from home and your bunk creaked. Jump ropes were made of real rope, thick, frayed, and heavy. They hurt when they snapped your legs, but they lasted forever. Kids gathered on driveways counting jumps, chanting rhymes, and switching partners with dizzying speed. You didn't need organized sports or high-tech gear, just a rope, some sneakers, and the rhythm of kids laughing until the sun started to set. Putting playing cards in your bike spokes made it sound like a motorcycle roaring down the street. You'd use clothespins, borrow Dad's deck, and zoom up and down the block like a rebel on wheels. It didn't cost a dime, but it made you feel faster, louder, and cooler than any kid with a horn. And the neighbors knew it too. Reading cereal boxes at the breakfast table was more entertaining than half the books at school. Puzzles, jokes, mazes, cartoons, even the ingredients list got a glance if you were bored enough. You'd rotate the box, reread everything, and sometimes cut out coupons like you were doing something important. Cars in the 50s came with built-in cigarette lighters and ashtrays in every door. Nobody thought twice about lighting up on the road, even with kids in the back seat. The lighter popped out red hot, and every dashboard had that little silver circle. It was just part of driving, like adjusting the rear view or waving at the neighbor in the other lane. Cap guns were the real deal back then. Metal, smoky, and loud enough to wake the baby next door. You'd load those little red rolls of paper caps and get a thumb burn from the hammer spring. The smell stuck to your fingers all day. It was noisy, gritty fun, and somehow nobody lost an eye or started a fire. Late-night TV used to end with the national anthem and a test pattern. After that, just static. No endless scrolling or midnight binge-watching. You'd sit there, half asleep, watching the flag wave and listening to that music. It was a gentle sign the day was done, and the world was calling it quits for the night. Fireflies were little miracles you could hold in your hand. You'd chase them through the grass with a mason jar, punch holes in the lid, and fall asleep watching them blink beside your bed. The next morning they were gone, but you didn't mind. Catching them was the real magic. Pepsodent came in a metal tube that you had to roll up with a little key to squeeze out the last bit. It smelled sharp, tasted funny, and left your mouth feeling like winter. You didn't love brushing your teeth, but there was something satisfying about winding that key tight at the end. That old treadle sewing machine in Grandma's front room was part furniture, part magic. You'd watch her feet pump the pedal while her hands guided the fabric, no electricity needed. The thing weighed a ton and smelled like oil and cloth. It never broke, never needed rebooting, and somehow stitched straighter than anything made sense. Opening your metal lunchbox in the school cafeteria usually meant a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in wax paper, maybe a cookie, maybe a thermos of warm milk, if it didn't leak. No Ziplocs or fancy ice packs, just simple food packed with love and a smell that always reminded you of the kitchen back home. Nothing got tossed if it could be reused, especially aluminum foil. You'd smooth it flat on the counter and fold it up for another round in the oven. Some pieces got reused so often they practically had a history. It wasn't about being eco-friendly, it was just common sense and a bit of Depression-era wisdom passed down. Teachers in the 50s had perfect cursive, and watching them write on the chalkboard was like watching art happen. Loops, slants, and tails flowed like water, and you tried to copy it on that ruled paper with uneven lines. If you messed up, it wasn't a typo. It was a life lesson, taught with a raised eyebrow and chalk dust. That wringer washer in the basement was part appliance, part medieval torture device. It gurgled, churned, and squeezed every towel like it held a grudge. You were warned to keep fingers far, far away from the rollers. Still, it got the job done, and your clothes came out cleaner than anything modern detergent ever bragged about. Handkerchiefs were a daily thing, neatly folded and tucked in your pocket by Mom before you left the house. Some were embroidered, some had your initials, and all of them were meant to be used. You didn't think twice about pulling one out for a sneeze, a skinned knee, or a tear on a tough day. Everything got ironed, shirts, pants, even pillowcases. You'd hear that hiss of steam and see the fresh crease in a sleeve. Nobody cared that it took half the day, it just mattered that things looked sharp. Even if you were just going to the grocery store, you wore pants with a crease and socks that matched. Magazines like Boy's Life and 17 were read cover to cover. You didn't skim or scroll, you savored. Every page was a little treasure, full of ads, advice, comics, and dreams. You'd fold the corners or clip the pages, then reread your favorites until the covers curled and the staples got rusty. Road trips weren't about the destination, they were about the games. License plate bingo, counting cows, or the alphabet game kept everyone busy in the back seat. No screens, no distractions, just sibling rivalries and a few maps that never folded right. Climbing into the back of an old pickup or even the trunk of a car for a laugh wasn't considered wild. It was just Saturday. You'd bounce around back there like loose luggage, waving at passing cars. It wasn't exactly safe, but nobody panicked. It was freedom. It was fun. And somehow, it all worked out. Joke shops were little treasure troves. You'd walk out with a fake mustache, a penny whistle, and a joy buzzer that shocked your cousin at dinner. For a couple of nickels, you could be a magician, a prankster, or a full-blown goofball. That little brown bag of tricks could keep a kid entertained for hours. Writing thank you notes wasn't optional. You got the gift. You wrote the note, neatly with proper punctuation. No emojis, no shortcuts, just good handwriting and a grateful heart. Your parents checked it before it went in the envelope. It wasn't just polite, it was expected. And deep down, it made the gesture feel real. Pencil sharpeners were mounted right on the classroom wall. You'd walk up, crank the handle, and listen to that awful screech as wood curled into little spirals. It was messy, loud, and kind of fun. Plus, it gave you an excuse to stretch your legs in the middle of math class. Helping Grandma shell peas was part of the rhythm of a summer afternoon. She'd sit you down with a bowl in your lap and a bigger one between you. It was slow work, and your fingers got sore, but the conversation made up for it. You learned more during those shelling sessions than any school ever taught. Double Dutch jump rope wasn't just a game. It was a skill. You waited for the rhythm, counted it off, and jumped in with both ropes swinging. Some kids had the timing, some had the tricks, and some just tried not to get whacked. It was schoolyard fame if you got good at it. Kids stuck their tongues on frozen metal at least once. Maybe it was a dare, maybe it was boredom, but it always ended with panic and someone running to get warm water. The lesson stuck with you longer than the ice ever did, and so did the teasing afterward. Those educational films they showed in school had one job: scare you straight. Whether it was about hygiene, safety, or stranger danger, they came with grainy film, monotone voices, and dramatic consequences. You sat wide-eyed and scared, then laughed about it at recess like it didn't make you sleep with the light on. Sneaking down the hallway to peek at the TV after bedtime was a full mission. Every floorboard creaked, and the glow from the screen lit up the dark like a signal. You'd watch from the corner just out of view until someone caught you or the show ended. It felt dangerous, but also just a little magical. Sofa beds were great in theory, extra space for guests, right? But that metal bar in the middle made sleep a contact sport. The mattress was thin, the springs squeaked, and every toss turned into a wrestling match. Still, you climbed in, pulled up the itchy blanket, and made it work with a smile. Cleaning erasers was a weird kind of honor. You'd clap them together outside until a chalk cloud puffed into the air like smoke signals. Kids laughed, coughed, and ended up with white fingerprints on their pants. No fancy machines, just hands, lungs, and dust that hung in the sunlight like confetti after a parade. Sitting cross-legged in front of the TV was practically a sport. You'd fiddle with the rabbit ears, twist, tilt, then hold it just so, until the picture stopped rolling. Sometimes you had to stand there like a human antenna, and if someone bumped it, you'd groan and start all over. But when it worked, Saturday mornings were magic. $1 in your hand and an errand to the corner store, it didn't get more grown-up than that. Eggs, bread, or milk, you knew what to get and brought back the change. The shopkeeper knew your name. No phones, no cards, just trust and a good memory. That little walk made you feel 10 feet tall. Butterscotch candies were currency. Grandparents always had a secret stash in a glass bowl that was just for guests. You'd sneak one, savor the crinkle of the wrapper, then trade it to a friend like it was buried treasure. They stuck to your teeth and lasted forever, and somehow tasted better when you weren't supposed to have them. The mailman used to whistle as he made his rounds. Same tune every day, echoing up the street before he even reached your box. Kids knew him by name, and he always gave the dog a pat on the head. Bills or birthday cards, it didn't matter. It felt like someone dropping off a little slice of the world. School picture day came with a plastic comb and a prayer. No second takes, no touch-ups. You got one shot, and if your collar was crooked or your hair stuck up, that was your portrait for the year. Parents framed it anyway. The background was always blue, the smile always awkward, and somehow it captured the whole year. Getting to take care of the class guinea pig over spring break was a huge deal. You'd bring home a cardboard box filled with straw, a water bottle, and that fuzzy little lump. It squeaked, it chewed, it smelled weird, and you loved every second of it. You felt responsible, important, like someone who could be trusted. Men used to tip their hats when they passed a lady on the street, a simple, silent nod of respect. It didn't matter if they were strangers. It was just how things were done. The gesture didn't need explaining. It said manners mattered, even in passing. And somehow it made sidewalks feel a little more human. School assemblies began with the whole room standing to sing the national anthem. No backing track, no video, just kids, teachers, and a flag at the front. Some sang loud, some mumbled, but everyone stood. It wasn't performative, it was routine. And somehow, starting the day with music made everything feel a little more grounded. Store windows at Christmas time were pure magic. Aluminum trees spun slowly under color wheels, casting reds, greens, and blues across the tinsel. Mechanical elves moved like clockwork toys behind the glass. You'd press your nose to the pane and watch until your breath fogged it up. It didn't matter if you bought anything. It felt like a show. Learning the state capitals wasn't a trivia game. It was a mission. You studied that laminated U.S. map until the names stuck in your head like gum on a shoe. The teacher pointed with a wooden stick, and you'd shout, Pierre or Topeka, with pride. Nobody had Google, but we had grit and flash cards. Wax lips, fangs, and tiny soda bottles filled with syrup, pure sugar joy wrapped in the weirdest packaging. You'd chew the wax until it lost all shape, spit it out on the sidewalk, and move on to the next one. They didn't taste great, but they were fun. And somehow, half the appeal was how strange they were. Starching doilies was like ironing lace armor. Mom would pin them to a towel, spray the starch, and press them flat with absolute focus. The smell filled the house. You weren't supposed to touch them once they were on the end table, but you always did. They were delicate, frilly relics of pride and patience. Lining up for polio shots was no one's favorite memory, but everyone remembers it. You stood in rows at school or town hall, got the jab, and walked away with a sucker. It stung, sure, but there was a sense of community in it, like we were all doing something big together. Mimeographed sheets came out warm and damp, with that sweet chemical smell. The ink was purple, the text a little fuzzy, and every kid wanted to be the one who passed them back. You'd sniff the stack like it was a bouquet. It sounds strange now, but back then, it was just another part of school. Hanging crepe paper in the school gym meant a dance was coming. You'd stretch it across rafters, twist it into spirals, and tape it to folding chairs. It was always the same colors, red, pink, maybe silver, and it always drooped by the end of the night. But for a few hours, that gym felt like magic. Baby books held pressed curls, footprints, and middle names nobody ever used. You'd sneak a peek and laugh at the old pictures. Mom in curlers, Dad in short shorts, you with drool on your chin. They smelled like dust and paper and family. And even if no one said it, they showed just how much you were loved. Licking envelope glue wasn't fun, but it was part of the job. Birthday cards, thank you notes, party invites, every envelope got sealed with a tongue and that unmistakable taste of library paste. It wasn't pleasant, but it was personal. Now it's all emails and swipe-up RSVPs. But back then, a letter meant something. Metal folding chairs were the unsung heroes of every school concert, church supper, and scout meeting. Cold in winter, loud when they scraped, and uncomfortable by the third hymn. But they got the job done. You unfolded one, sat straight, and tried not to drop your plate or fall asleep during the 6th verse of Silent Night. Candy cigarettes came in little white boxes with red tips painted on the ends. You'd puff them like movie stars, trying to look cool before they dissolved in your mouth. No one thought twice about it. Just one more weird little slice of pretend adulthood. Back then, even candy came with a bit of mischief. Covering your school books in brown paper bags wasn't just practical, it was a blank canvas. You'd decorate the fronts with doodles, stickers, or your crush's name in bubble letters. It kept the books clean and gave every kid a bit of personal flair. Plus, it made math class just a little more bearable. And here's the thing about all of it. The screen doors, the milkman, the goodbyes that lasted until the car was gone, none of it happened by accident. That world was built by a generation that had just survived something unimaginable, came home, and decided that what they wanted more than anything was exactly this. So, let's talk about how they did it. After the war ended, America finally exhaled. Jobs were steady, factories roared back to life, and paychecks stretched farther than anyone remembered. Young couples got married, built houses, and dreamed bigger than their parents ever could. There was optimism in the air, the kind you could feel just walking down a street filled with new cars and fresh paint. Suburbs seemed to rise overnight. Neat rows of homes, green lawns trimmed just right, white fences lining every street. Driveways gleamed with brand-new cars, and every porch had a flag, a radio, or a family sitting outside after supper. It was a new kind of American dream. Close enough to the city for work, but far enough to feel safe. The post-war boom was more than money. It was momentum. From jet engines to space dreams, America believed in progress. Factories innovated, schools expanded, and the word tomorrow carried excitement instead of fear. It felt like the country was moving forward together. Every family, every worker, every student, all pulling in the same direction toward something brighter. Big cities were alive, but they still felt safe. Families strolled downtown after dark, neon signs buzzing above clean sidewalks, and store windows filled with new fashions. Movie marquees glowed like invitations, and corner diners stayed open late. You could leave your car unlocked and your coat on a chair. Trust was still stronger than fear in those years. A house cost around $8,000, and a single income could cover everything: the mortgage, groceries, and even a summer trip. One paycheck supported a family, and most months ended with a few dollars left over. You could live comfortably, not extravagantly, but with peace of mind. That kind of security was worth more than gold back then. People took pride in what they owned. Every Saturday, driveways filled with the sound of radios and the smell of car wax. Dads washed Chevys until they shined like mirrors. Moms swept porches, and kids mowed lawns in tidy rows. A painted fence wasn't decoration. It was a reflection of care, proof that home really meant something. When the interstate highway system broke ground in 1956, it changed everything. Families loaded cars with luggage and headed out to see America. Motels, diners, and roadside attractions dotting the way. Each mile of new asphalt meant freedom, connection, and adventure. The open road became part of the national story, written in concrete and optimism. Faith, family, and friendship anchored daily life. Sundays were for church, afternoons for family dinners, and evenings for neighbors on the porch. People found comfort in simple things: community, conversation, and gratitude. There was a rhythm to life that didn't rush. You knew where you belonged, and you took pride in it, quietly and completely. Buying a home wasn't just for the rich. Prices were low, wages were fair, and veterans coming home found help through the GI Bill. A small house with 2 bedrooms and a carport wasn't out of reach. It was expected. People believed in roots, in staying put, and in building something that could last longer than a single lifetime. Drive-in theaters felt like magic. The open sky above, headlights dimming, and the smell of buttered popcorn drifting between rows of cars. Teenagers leaned out windows, kids wore pajamas, and families watched double features from the back seat. It was cheap, it was simple, and it was pure 1950s America. Entertainment that came wrapped in starlight and laughter. Filling up the tank didn't sting your wallet. Gas was about 25 cents a gallon, and $3 went a long way. Every station had attendants in crisp uniforms who'd check your oil, clean your windshield, and wish you good evening. It wasn't just service. It was civility, the kind of everyday courtesy that made ordinary moments feel special. College didn't require a lifetime of debt. Tuition was reasonable. Part-time jobs paid the bills, and graduates walked into steady careers right after commencement. For many families, higher education was a step up, not a gamble. It was an era when effort still met opportunity, when studying hard truly could change the course of your life. America's factories were roaring. Assembly lines turned out cars, refrigerators, televisions, and everything in between, solid, American-made, and built to last. Workers took pride in what they made because it wasn't disposable. Every paycheck came from something tangible, something built by hand. Industry wasn't just an economy. It was a source of identity, purpose, and pride. Vacations were road trips in station wagons with the windows rolled down and the radio humming. You stopped for pie at roadside diners, collected postcards, and stayed in motels with neon signs that buzzed all night. The drive itself was the adventure. Every mile brought new sights, new stories, and memories that lasted far longer than the trip itself. The word community carried weight. Neighbors shared sugar, traded tools, and stopped by unannounced just to say hello. When someone got sick, casseroles showed up without being asked. Kids played in every yard as if the whole block belonged to them. It wasn't about privacy or perfection. It was about belonging. Everyone needed everyone, and that was enough. Small towns knew how to celebrate. 4th of July parades wound down Main Street with floats, marching bands, and kids waving flags from their bikes. The whole town gathered for fireworks at night, blankets on the grass, coolers of lemonade, and applause after every burst. It wasn't about spectacle. It was about togetherness, pride, and being part of something bigger. A handshake could close a deal back then. Trust mattered more than fine print, and a man's word was as binding as any contract. Neighbors lent money, businesses extended credit, and people stood by their promises. It was a time when integrity wasn't rare, it was expected, and losing it cost you more than money ever could. Neighbors didn't need to be asked for help. They just showed up. Someone's roof leaked? You grabbed a ladder. Fence broke? You brought tools. No favors owed, no keeping score. It was an unspoken agreement that community wasn't a word. It was an action. Helping each other wasn't kindness. It was just what decent people did. Families built things together. Gardens, porches, and dreams. Dad swung hammers while kids fetched nails, and moms planted flowers that still bloom in old yards today. It wasn't just about the projects. It was about time spent side by side. Even small things, a birdhouse, a sandbox, turned into stories that lasted long after the paint dried. People believed in earning what they had. Credit was rare, cash was king, and saving for something made it matter more. Hand-me-downs weren't shameful. They were sensible. When you finally bought something new, you took care of it. Gratitude came naturally in a world that still valued patience, thrift, and the quiet dignity of living within your means. Downtown still thrived, alive with window displays, neon lights, and the smell of popcorn from the theater. Barbershops buzzed, record stores played music into the street, and diners filled with the clatter of plates. Main Street wasn't nostalgic yet. It was normal. Every town had one, and every Saturday it was the heart of American life. Shopping was personal back then. The butcher knew your order, the grocer knew your kids, and the pharmacist didn't just hand you a prescription. He asked how your family was doing. Everything happened face to face, not through screens or scanners. Money changed hands with smiles, not swipes. Buying something wasn't a transaction. It was a conversation. Television wasn't background noise. It was an event. Families gathered on the couch for I Love Lucy, The Ed Sullivan Show, or The Lone Ranger. Laughter, applause, and that warm glow filled the room. There was only one TV in the house, but it was enough, because everyone wanted to watch together, not apart. Radios filled kitchens with music that soothed the day. Perry Como, Doris Day, Nat King Cole. The gentle crackle between songs was as familiar as the ticking clock. Dinner simmered on the stove while melodies wrapped around the family like comfort itself. Music wasn't about fame or downloads. It was about feeling good right where you were. Cars weren't just transportation. They were pride on four wheels. Tail fins gleamed, chrome sparkled, and engines purred with power. Every driveway looked like a car show. Washing and waxing on Saturdays was a ritual, and Sunday drives were a reward. Those cars weren't practical, but they were beautiful. Reflections of a country that still dreamed in color. Gas stations were part service, part social stop. Attendants filled your tank, washed your windows, and sometimes handed out free glasses or S&H green stamps. You didn't even have to step out of the car. There was conversation, courtesy, and maybe a tip jar on the counter. Refueling felt friendly, another small ritual in a slower, kinder America. Politeness was expected, not praised. Men tipped their hats, boys held doors, and girls said, "Thank you." Neighbors greeted each other on sidewalks. Strangers helped pick up dropped groceries, and everyone minded their manners. It wasn't formality. It was respect. The kind that made even the smallest town feel like a place you wanted to call home. Teachers held authority and earned respect. Classrooms were quiet, chalk squeaked on the blackboards, and kids stood when spoken to. Lessons went beyond books. They taught discipline, honesty, and pride in your work. Parents backed teachers, not argued with them. School was serious, but fair. Every child learned that effort and respect could take them farther than excuses. The school lunchroom had its own rhythm. The clatter of trays, the smell of gravy, and warm yeast rolls stacked high. Real cooks made hearty meals that felt like home. You didn't count calories. You counted friends at your table. Lunch wasn't rushed or packaged. It was shared, noisy, and honest. It was another small comfort of growing up in the 1950s. Kids walked to school without a second thought, lunch boxes clanking and bikes lined up by the fence. Streets were quiet. Drivers waved, and every crossing guard knew your name. You carried peanut butter sandwiches, a thermos of milk, and the freedom to roam. There was no traffic jam or stranger danger, just kids on their way, laughing all the way there. Every morning, the milkman's truck rattled through the neighborhood before sunrise. Glass bottles clinked softly on porches, the air still cool and quiet. Families woke to find fresh milk, cream, or butter waiting by the door, each bottle capped in foil and icy cold to the touch. It was simple, dependable, a daily rhythm that felt both ordinary and special. Housewives took pride in every detail. Floors gleamed, linen smelled of sunshine, and curtains fluttered in the breeze from open windows. Clotheslines stretched across backyards full of crisp shirts and bright towels. It wasn't drudgery, it was dignity. Keeping a home spotless wasn't about appearances, it was about care, about giving your family something steady in a world that was changing fast. New appliances were miracles. Washing machines swirled where hands once scrubbed. Refrigerators hummed instead of ice boxes melting, and vacuums rolled like spaceships across living rooms. The promise of convenience arrived in chrome and enamel, changing the rhythm of the household forever. For the first time, families had more time to rest, to laugh, to sit together without chores waiting. Department stores were like temples of wonder. Escalators carried you past perfume counters, toy aisles stretched endlessly, and holiday displays glittered like dreams. A clerk in gloves might gift wrap your purchase just because. Sears, J.C. Penney, and Woolworths weren't just stores. They were experiences, places where window shopping could lift your mood as much as buying ever did. The Sears catalog felt like magic in the mail. Page after page of furniture, dresses, and Christmas toys you could order from your living room. Kids circled their wishes in pencil, parents planned home projects, and everything you needed could arrive by train or truck. It wasn't just a catalog. It was a portal to possibility, bound in glossy paper. Dinner wasn't something you grabbed. It was something you gathered for. Tables were set, grace was said, and stories from the day filled the air. The smell of roast, mashed potatoes, and rolls drifted through every home. Nobody ate alone or stared at screens. Family time wasn't a slogan. It was simply what everyone did every single night. Groceries didn't cost much, but they went far. A few dollars bought a week's worth of real food: flour, meat, butter, and vegetables. Every meal started from scratch, with the steady rhythm of chopping, stirring, and tasting. Food tasted like home because it was made there. Kitchens were the heart of the house, and every dish carried a story. Restaurants served the kind of food that felt familiar: roast beef with brown gravy, mashed potatoes, green beans, and pie that tasted like someone's grandmother made it. Waitresses knew regulars by name, and a good tip meant your coffee never went cold. Eating out wasn't fast, it wasn't fancy. It was comfort served on china with a smile. Fast food was still a novelty. McDonald's was the new kid on the block, serving burgers for 15 cents and shakes you needed 2 hands to hold. The glowing arches looked futuristic, and kids begged to go just for the fun of it. No one guessed it was the start of something bigger. Just that dinner came quick and tasted good. Sundays had their own rhythm. Families dressed their best for church, filled pews with familiar faces, and came home to roast dinners that filled the house with warmth. Afternoons were for rest, front porches, iced tea, and the sound of baseball on the radio. Sunday wasn't about doing, it was about being. Still, grateful, and together. Family drives were their own kind of adventure. No one needed a destination, just smooth roads, a full tank, and maybe a stop for ice cream. Windows rolled down, the wind in your hair, and the radio humming a tune everyone knew. Sometimes you talked, sometimes you didn't. Either way, the road had a way of bringing people closer. Summer belonged to the kids. They built soapbox races, played marbles in the dirt, and stayed out until the street lights flickered on. With no screens and few rules, imagination ruled the day. Skinned knees were badges of honor, and boredom was the birthplace of creativity. Childhood wasn't curated. It was lived, loud, messy, and completely free. The corner drugstore was a treasure chest of small joys. You could sip a milkshake at the counter flip through comic books, and buy penny candy with nickels dug from your pocket. The soda jerk knew your favorite flavor, and the pharmacist might slip you a free stick of gum. It wasn't just a store, it was a hangout, a heartbeat. Nothing beat an ice-cold Coke in a glass bottle. You'd pop the cap, watch the fizz rise, and take that first sharp sip while condensation ran down your hand. It was sweet, simple, and perfectly American. Kids collected bottle caps. Grown-ups collected memories. Before plastic and twist-offs, even a drink carried a kind of ceremony you never forget. Families gathered around the TV to watch the evening news and actually trusted what they heard. Anchormen spoke plainly, without drama or opinion, and people believed them because truth still carried weight. Afterward, the TV went dark, and families talked about the stories. Information felt smaller, slower, and somehow more human. It was news that united, not divided. A dollar stretched far because quality stretched further. Things weren't replaced. They were repaired. Appliances ran for decades, furniture lasted generations, and tools were passed down, not thrown away. The idea of built to last wasn't marketing. It was a promise. People didn't chase trends. They bought what worked and kept it until it couldn't anymore. Every morning, the thump of a newspaper on the porch meant the world had arrived. Dads unfolded it at breakfast, moms read it over coffee, and kids checked the comics before school. Headlines shaped conversation, not arguments. The news felt local, human, and honest. Everyone knew what was going on, and somehow that made the country feel smaller and closer. Jobs came with security, pensions, benefits, and faith that the company you started with might be the one you retired from. Employers invested in people, and workers took pride in loyalty. You didn't need to job hop to survive. Hard work was enough. That quiet sense of stability gave life a rhythm modern times rarely allow anymore. Doctors still made house calls, carrying black bags that smelled faintly of medicine and leather. When someone was sick, neighbors brought casseroles, kids delivered flowers from the yard, and nobody faced illness alone. Medicine was personal, and healing felt communal. The line between kindness and care didn't exist. They were the same thing. The corner barber shop and beauty salon were the social centers of the neighborhood. Men swapped jokes over the hum of clippers, while women traded recipes under the smell of hairspray. The striped pole spun outside like a signal of familiarity. You didn't just get a haircut. You got caught up on life, community, and every bit of local news. Schools still taught the fundamentals, civics, handwriting, and practical skills like shop and home economics. You learned how to write a letter, balance a checkbook, and build something with your hands. Education wasn't about tests. It was about character. Teachers shaped good citizens, not just students. And that foundation carried people through their whole lives. Above all, the 1950s were built on hope, a deep, steady faith that tomorrow would be even better. Hard work mattered, honesty paid off, and the future felt like something you could count on. The country wasn't perfect, but it was optimistic. That quiet confidence, that belief in better days, was the true soul of the era.